Welcome to the Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership Podcast. Subscribe now so you don't miss a drop of straight talk you can't get anywhere else. We discuss the whiskeys to drink, music to listen to, and what it really takes to be an effective leader. I'm your host, Galen Bingham, the leadership strategist. Tonight's guest, founder of Sound by Sid and editor of the Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership Podcast, Sidney Evans. Hey, what you drinking? Okay, we are going to take you on a journey, and this is an experience that I don't know that many people get to enjoy, but I'm going to take you behind the scenes of the Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership experience. And, you get to hear from me every week. And then once an episode, you get to hear from Ms. Audrey Weidlich, who is the logistical program manager. But you have never experienced the mastermind behind the mixing and the editor. And that is what I'm going to bring to you today, Mr. Sidney Evans. How are you doing, man? Welcome to the show.
I'm doing fantastic, Galen. Thank you for having me. I'm finally glad to come from behind the scenes and jump to the forefront and chop it up with you.
Man, this is gonna be kind of cool because, like I said, a lot of times people think that I'm doing everything, that I'm running this show, that I'm producing the show, that I'm editing the show, and I'm gonna tell you the first couple episodes, that's exactly what was happening. But finally, I had some experts saying, "Dude, you need to come into this new higher level of production. Let me show you how it's done." And that's exactly what happened with Mr. Sidney Evans, and I am so glad he did. But I'm so ahead of myself. I am so ahead of myself. I haven't even asked the most important question, and that is, so what you drinking?
Yeah, so I am partaking this evening, but I'm gonna keep it real simple. Just having some 1800 Blanco. I can't mess with the Reposado. I'm doing Blanco, some club soda, and a little bit of lime juice. Just keeping it real clean, and so I'll be good to be a fully functioning adult after this interview is over.
So you going with the white with the Blanco? Okay, all right. Well, as you know, probably better than anyone, I've got to keep with the integrity of this being the Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership show. So I'm gonna go for some brown liquor, some bourbon whiskey, and this is something that was at the foundation of my taking this whiskey thing seriously. You guys may remember my having a conversation with Dr. Aaron Dickey, and he was the one who introduced me to Cassius Clay bourbon whiskey. And this is straight from Kentucky, and this is right at 100 proof, so it's bottle and bond. But this was the thing that really kind of turned me on to taking this thing seriously. So because you were at the foundation of me taking this podcasting thing seriously, I thought it made sense. So I'm gonna crack this open. It's got a little cannon barrel, cannon top at the top of it. And let's see. Let's go ahead and crack. I haven't hit this in a while.
Feels like you're real familiar with it as we getting down to the nitty gritty of that bottle.
That's right, man. I was gonna say, man, I don't hit this very often because you can only get this in Kentucky. So here we go. Let's pour a little bit of this. Just and man, yeah, this brings back incredible memories of when I stepped over the line from a casual taster to I don't know that I would call myself an aficionado, but I definitely identify as being a bourbon head. So while I get into this foundational bourbon, I would love for you to share with the audience just kind of your background and how you got into the space where you're not only doing this at an incredibly high level, you're doing this for this show, and you're doing this for so many others who are at a point where they're trying to step their podcast production game up. So, talk a little bit about your background, and I'm going to get into this Cassius Clay.
All right, yeah. I'm gonna get to it. Sounds good, but I disclaimer. You know how some people have stories where it's like, I knew what I wanted to do since I was 3 years old, and I'm, or maybe not three, but 4 or 5 years old, very young, and they stuck to it, and they're doing it now. That's not what this is at all. So just a disclaimer. To make a long story short, to kind of give you the Cliff Notes version. I grew up in a sports family. I'm from North Carolina, Tobacco Road they call it, which is like the epicenter of college basketball. You got Duke University. I'm from Durham, where Duke is, and then you got UNC Chapel Hill, 15, 20 minutes up the road, and another 30, 35 minutes you got NC State. So I grew up in a huge sports family. I was a huge Duke fan growing up. Also was a really big baseball fan growing up. That was actually the sport that I first fell in love with and started playing. And then eventually I started playing basketball too, and I was torn between the two. So for a while I did both. So, played AAU. I actually played baseball in middle school, but I did not make the basketball team in middle school. I didn't make the basketball team until I got to high school. And then I hit a major growth spurt, and being a young black kid, I was always like the only black one on the baseball teams. And once you start getting to an age where your social life and your culture and all that stuff kind of matters more to you, you start to gravitate towards that. So I let baseball go, much to the disappointment of my father. He lit up telling stories about me playing baseball when I was younger, which I learned later. So he was a bit disappointed, but um, started focusing on basketball. Played in high school. Ended up going to junior college and playing Maryland Cecil College. Ended up transferring to Fayetteville State University, which is where I got my undergrad degree from. But to take it back to Cecil College, junior college, I feel like that was the seed that was planted for my interest in media, which it ultimately led to me, working in the audio industry. So I had my coach, Coach Bill Lewitt. He was, like I said, my coach, but he also taught like like an entry level communications class. And he made the class so relatable and fun for me. So I was like, okay, well, when I go to 4 year, maybe I'll major in like mass comm or something communication center. So that's what I ended up doing at Fayetteville State. It was very broad. He took a lot of like, theory courses, had to take video production, public speaking, things like that. But the funny part is initially, to fulfill one of my credits, I took audio production, but I failed it. So I that's the only class I've ever failed in college, and it's the field that I work in now. Part of it was because I didn't really understand like the grasp, the concept of it at that time, but I didn't take the time to really focus on it because I was so immersed in like playing ball and just kind of had doing what I had to do to not just stay eligible. I was always a B, maybe every C and now and again student, but I never was looking at it as a career, long term for me then. So I actually ended up taking video production to fulfill that credit. But to fast forward, I graduated. I did intern within our athletic department because I had another year of credits to complete before I ended up graduating. Initially wanted to do sports broadcasting, be in front of the camera, but then I just kind of started gravitating to behind the scenes then without even realizing it. So doing some camera work, operating the scoreboard, things like that. And then once I graduated, I actually started working in hospitality just to like make a living for myself, but I would volunteer and do things media wise, I guess you could say. And where things really turned for me was I kind of, when you go out on your own and you're struggling to figure yourself out, if that process takes longer than you anticipate, you can kind of slip into a funk. And if you can't pull yourself out of it, you can go to like a depression state, which is pretty much what happened to me. So I know I didn't have that built-in structure from playing sports anymore. And so I had to establish like my own principles and rituals and values that I was going to carry, as I ventured more into manhood. But I started listening to a lot of music around that time, and working out and getting back in shape and things like that. And one day it just dawned on me, it was like, man, this is the only thing that's really pulling me out of this, pit that I'm in. And like, what really goes into making music? Like, how can something, like somebody has to create it, and how can they create something that really touches your spirit like that? So I went down a YouTube rabbit hole and thought I was going to start, become a music producer and Thinking back on it now, it's kind of funny, but I'm grateful for it because it taught me all the foundational principles of audio production, which I carry with me now. So luckily I realized that my music sucked. And this is around the time that podcasting became very popular. And I had a friend who was a public speaker, had his own podcast, which is very good content wise, but the audio quality sucked. So I just started like editing his show for free and started doing research. We're like, man, there's all these groups out here for people to, kind of get in the industry of doing this to make it for money. So I was doing it for free for till next to nothing, and then that led to one client, which led to another client, led to another client, and then I kind of feel like I got pigeonholed into the space of just, you know, just doing like interview style shows and people recording out of their basements or whatever, or just doing it as a hobby. Which I don't include you in that category because this is obviously like a tool to promote your brand and your business. So I started looking more to people who were really investing more and really had, skin in the game and something outside of the podcast that was a greater good. I realized that podcasting was becoming like the third tier of like TV film. You have TV film and then podcasting, and I wanted to do more narrative style stuff that was edgier, had more production value, sound design, scripts, and really talented producers. And then eventually I broke through, got a long-term contract gig doing that, which led me to my first opportunity to like speak at a podcast festival. And a connection there led me to getting the last job that I hold, which was associate producer at Tenderfoot TV, who does not branded podcasts, but true crime podcasts. The company before previous that I did branded podcasts. So I felt like I finally kind of cracked the code or opened the door and was getting into the really high level produced stuff. And that has kind of led me into the season that I am now. So hopefully that wasn't too long, but that's a little bit about my journey.
Oh my gosh. And that's a fascinating story, and not very different than what I hear from a lot of guests, in that, and I tell audiences this myself in some of the live conversations I have. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be a global SVP of sales for a Fortune 500 company. I'm not supposed to be here, but yet God had better plans for me. And oh my gosh, I'm so glad that God did not listen to what I was trying to suggest that I'm supposed to be doing, because a lot of people will say, Galen, it sounds like you're having fun. And the reason it sounds that way is because I'm having fun. And I'm going to say the same thing to you, Sidney. It doesn't seem like you're working. I mean, you're doing a job, you're doing it at a high level, but it seems like you're having fun, that you're just expressing what's inside of you. And I think that's one of the things that may have been one of the things that attracted us to each other. I'm gonna ask you to go back, right? Let's go back to like episode 1 or 2 of Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership, and it's still out there. If you double all the way back, maybe even through my first conversation with Dr. Peter James, those first 3 episodes, yours truly did all the editing. I did all the mixing. I was it. And you heard something in those first few episodes, and you felt like there's something here, but it could be more. What was it that caused you to think, bless his heart, he's trying, but I think I could help. I think I could help elevate what he's trying to do here.
The first thing that caught my eye was, okay, he actually invested in some quality equipment based off just the quality of the sound as just a straight recording, because the foundational principle of audio is get a good recording and everything else follows after that. So I was like, okay, he actually invested, and he just didn't try to record straight off his computer or use the little mic that comes on like some headphones or something. Like he's willing to invest. So I know he cares about the end result. And as far as me adding my touch, I just thought I could make it like more concise and tighter. I knew I still like the conversational tone of your shows. Like I feel like I could add my touch, but nobody would notice that I'm there really. Like it sounds like it's supposed to sound. outside of like, the introductory music and the outro and adding my little touch with, which I know you, this is a gem. I don't know if you all know, but when Galen pours his drink at the beginning of the episode, I leave the original in there, but I also mix in like a sound effect. So you still get the authenticity of him doing it live, but it's elevated a little bit. That's a trick that I learned from working at Tenderfoot. But I feel like I could just, take it to another level and nobody really noticed. And it's because I saw that you're willing to invest in your equipment, and you seem like, based off what you do and obviously me knowing now, like everything that you associate yourself with, you want it to be as high quality as possible. And even I had that inclination during that time. So I just, reached out via email, and I think that was probably the first period where I actually started seeking out clients and seeing how I could help people and add my skill set. And he was receptive to it, and then the rest is history. Here we are today.
Man, I'll tell you, there are so many great leadership principles in that part of your story. And I found myself getting to, I think we were kind of in the same place at the same time, in that there is so much that you can do. There's only so much that you can do on your own. But you've got to find someone who is a professional and someone who has singular focus. There's nothing like working with someone who has singular focus. There are very few things that Audrey does for me, that Sydney does with me, that I can't do on my own. But I can't do it at the same level because I'm doing so many other things and I haven't had the time to study and to concentrate. And so when you find people, when it comes time for you to elevate your position, you got to find people who have the talent and have the passion and they have the singular focus to do this thing that you're trying to do yourself. For me, that has been the secret to any success that I'm enjoying now, is because I've surrounded myself with folks who are professional and they have singular focus. It kind of reminds me of, I know you're an R&B dude. I know you're an R&B dude. I got some R&B in me too, but I keep thinking of one of my invisible board members, and that's Prince. And there was a period in Prince's career at the very beginning where he was playing all the instruments. He was writing all the music. He was choreographing all the dance moves. He was doing everything. So he could do it. But when he decided to elevate his position, he went out and got Maceo Parker to play the saxophone. He went and got Candy Dufler to play the saxophone for him. He went and got some real serious dudes to play the other instruments. Although he could do it, he wanted someone who was professional, who had singular focus to elevate him to who we've come to know as being Prince, the artist today. Talk a little bit about your passion for music, but I want you to do it this way, because I'm going to do this right. Since I got my podcast editor here, I'm going to do this right. Help me talk through the meaning of the show from your perspective. Whiskey, jazz, and leadership. And I talk about this all the time, that for me, I like all three literally. I like the metaphor of whiskey. For me, the metaphor is doing what you enjoy with your crew, with the folks you enjoyed with. The metaphor of jazz is, how do you get from where you are to where you need to be, even in situations where sheet music just isn't going to cut it. It's just not going to work, or it's not even available. And then for me, leadership, the metaphor is, marketing is fun, strategy is important, but nobody eats unless somebody kills something. Someone needs to stand up and say, we're going to take this action. We're going to go this direction. Until someone does that, then we're just having a conversation. So how does that metaphor fit your journey and how you approach things now?
To be honest, I think it's a really relatable life principle, but obviously it applies to whiskey, jazz, and leadership, individually and together as well. But I think the foundation of it is, you have a combination of the technical and then the creative, right? So for like whiskey, like there's certain things, processes that you have to do in order for it to be classified as whiskey. There's a certain funkiness to jazz that classified it in that category, or music in general. You have to be in a certain key. That's just a foundational thing for leadership. Like there are certain things you have to do as a leader. You have to be able to motivate people to become the best version of themselves and get top tier results. That's kind of the technical part, but the creative part is the you part of it. All the different brands of whiskey, whether Jack Daniels, I don't know, Crown Royal, I don't know if these are all whiskeys. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not a whiskey connoisseur, but there's certain I guess certain notes, certain flavors, something on the front end or the back end from all the different brands that differentiate it as that particular brand. The packaging is different. That's a creative aspect. The marketing is different. So that's that as far as whiskey. As far as jazz, there are certain styles like the people who are performing the jazz, they have a certain way that they present themselves as far as dress. Some people are, may have a huge band. It might be two or three people in one. Somebody might be doing it solo. All those certain creatives, I guess, especially for, music, like they can kind of go real left and out there with the creativity. Obviously, that being someone who is a fan of Prince. I mean, as far as leadership, I'll make a sports reference, like, how a Bobby Knight achieves results as a coach, as an authoritarian, hard nosed coach is very different than somebody like a Brad Stevens, who was more of a player's coach, and it was a bit more relatable to his players, and he was much younger. So there are all these nuances that occur from a creative standpoint. But when you combine all the two, that's when you get the uniqueness from whether it's whiskey, jazz, or leadership. I guess you can apply that to a lot of different other areas in life as well. But for me, I like to break down to make it as simple as possible. And for me, that's extremely simple. But when you really think about it, it can become complex when you add all the layers to it.
It definitely layered, definitely layered. I want to go back to something that we talked about a little bit earlier, and that is the fact that you had a client selection process. And that is something that I can identify with, because when I first started calling myself a coach, this was even before I got any certifications. I just started calling myself a coach. If you had $50 in a problem, you had a coach. I didn't have a criteria. And so I was doing a whole lot of coaching, but I wasn't making a whole lot of money. And quite honestly, I wasn't connecting with the right kinds of people. I wasn't really doing an effective job of coaching. I was having conversations, but there was no selection criteria. I hadn't gotten to the point where you described a little while ago, where I was taking even my job seriously. It was just something that I was doing. But I had to develop a selection criteria of, these are the kinds of clients that I work best with. And these are the kinds of clients that I look for. What did it take? Because I heard something similar in your story. What did it take for you to get to a point where you said, I can't do this for everybody, because first of all, I'm not enjoying it, and then I'm not making money. What did it take for you to say, these are the kinds of clients that I'm going to look to work with, because that's my crew?
The first thing was like some of the subject matter, because like the message that they were getting across, because I had to personally connect with it and feel like it was meaningful, and it was something that people could really gravitate to, and there was a lot of meat and potatoes too, because I feel like otherwise people are gonna do it for a little while and then quit if it's not something that's really meaningful. They're kind of just going along with the trend. And then something I mentioned earlier too is that it was a it there it was a means to an end. It wasn't just doing it for the sake of doing it. Like for you, you're doing this to obviously talk about things that you're passionate about. But one of those things is, your business, but the other two are kind of more so hobbies. So for you specifically, I thought it was a cool idea to combine those to kind of, be able to promote and market yourself, but not to do it in a salesy way. It was just in a more organic, unique way, I believed. And because it was sort of a lead magnet or a way for you to connect to other like-minded people from a leadership standpoint, I knew that you were going to be invested in it for the long term. And I didn't want to just be the editor for somebody. I wanted to be a client. I feel like I wanted to have clients, but I feel like are two different things. Clients are someone that you, over time, you have a longer term relationship with, you build connections. I just didn't want to do editing for people for a month or two and then they call it quits, and then I'm looking for the next one. I was looking for something that was long standing and meaningful just as much as the podcast itself. I feel like that connection was important.
Hey, it's not too late. Hit that subscribe button so you're sure to catch the next episode. If you're really enjoying the vibe, leave us a review or become a VIP for guest and show exclusives. Cheers.